Hi, this is Frank Berry from the 2550-100 Solutions Lab at QLogic Corporation, and I'm here with Monica Pardee, a VMware engineer with QLogic IT. And the reason why we're here with Monica is because, well, first, 2550-100 Ethernet brings to the market a whole lot of more bandwidth. And so it raises questions about how do you manage all that bandwidth. Now, what Monica has done at QLogic IT is they have actually done some work to partition that bandwidth at 10 gig. So, Monica, tell us what you did with by partitioning that 10 gig bandwidth.
The goal for us was to have a single fabric. When you have a single network fabric, you would have one card, one switch, all the way from my servers to the storage to the core. This saves a lot of money, obviously, and in IT, the return on investment is really important. Whenever you're going to go to a new technology, you have to show that it's worth it, right? So for us, what we need to do, because we could only have one fabric for the money, we needed to be able to fit production traffic, test dev traffic, vMotion traffic, and our management network all on that single fabric. And what we could do with NPAR and QoS was do that at the hardware layer instead of at the hypervisor level, which some other virtual network technologies allow you to do. Because that was at the hardware layer, when we presented those virtual NICs to vSphere, vSphere doesn't realize that I don't have 8 NICs. It sees that they are physical partitions. It treats them as if they are physical NICs. So what I'm able to do then is add that to a virtual distributed switch, which then further isolated that traffic from the hardware layer to the hypervisor level, and each virtual distributed switch was then a physical or a production, test dev, vMotion, and management. And then further controlling it, I was able to use vSphere, VMware Network I/O control to prioritize the traffic that I want prioritized. In my case, production traffic needs to be prioritized to minimize noisy neighbors, chatter from test dev servers, anything like that. We don't want vMotion, if there's a big one, to impact those production server traffic. So that's what we were able to do with NPAR on 10 gig.
Okay, so you were able to do this on a single fabric. Was that all on multiple servers, or what was the business benefit of all this?
Well, previously, if you wanted to isolate your test dev and your production VMs, you would have to have an entire other cluster for true isolation. So, say before we had maybe a smaller cluster of test dev virtual servers, and then we had a production cluster. And we had to maintain not just multiple networks, but multiple server clusters to really keep those isolated. And it doesn't make a lot of sense when you have servers that have a lot of CPU power, a lot of memory, because you have to buy that hardware. But you can't keep that many servers on it because you're minimizing the network traffic. So as CPU and memory resources became more affordable, more available, you want to have more on them. You want to be using those resources, and that means you have to protect your production, your critical apps in a different way, and we used NPAR to do that.
So are you telling me you consolidated servers? Is that what you're saying?
We not only consolidated, we basically went from a 7-server production cluster and a 5-server test dev cluster, which equals a lot of cards, a lot of ports, a lot of cables, into a single 8-server cluster. And with obviously, the great new servers that we have now. So we were able to consolidate and collapse 2 different full clusters into one. And that saved us a lot of money.
So looking forward, do you see that the need to look at partitioning and virtualize those NICs is going to increase with 2550-100?
Oh, definitely even more so. I mean, what server administrator said, I don't need more bandwidth? Nobody says that, right? So when people say to me, well, I don't need 25 gig, what am I going to use that for? I say, yeah, maybe it sounds like a lot, but when you start carving that up, I think about even for standalone servers, well, with 25 gig, I can have 10 gig Ethernet, and then I can do, 15 gig FCOE, or I can use that for storage traffic, and I'm able to isolate it a much finer level with greater bandwidth. Who doesn't want that? The limitation of 10 gig is that if I use the full 4 port functions, right? I have them. Those are kind of small partitions for modern applications. You know, you're talking about 3.5 gig for production, 2 gig for test dev. And would I like to have more for production, more for vMotion, those kind of like heavy resource utilization? Yes, I would. Once 25 gig is out, I can give that production traffic so much more bandwidth, which is what it needs.
Thank you, Monica.